I know we've only known each other for 4 weeks and 3 days, but to me, it seems like 9 weeks and 5 days.
All right, everybody. Welcome. It is Sunday. It's time for the Sunday edition of the Let's Get Growing show right here on the Urban Gardener channel. I'm Enoch. I'm your host today. We've got a really great show for you today. Been waiting for this for a little while now to get our man Gardener Scott back on the channel today. So he'll be joining with us here just a little bit later on the show because it is our second Sunday of the month. And throughout the year, Gardener Scott has been joining us to come and answer all of your gardening questions. Gardener Scott is master gardener and one of my go-to gardeners. So he'll have all sorts of great answers for any sort of questions you might have. So be sure to stick around a little bit later in the show and bring all of your great gardening questions for the conversation. So I'm looking forward to that. It's been, I think he had scheduling conflicts. We haven't had to have him. We haven't had him on the show for the last couple of months now, too. So we've got a lot to catch up with Gardener Scott here just a little bit later on in the show for sure. So really excited about that. And remember, everybody, if you are here right at the top of the show, let's click the like button, hit that thumbs up, and as well subscribe to the channel if you haven't subscribed yet. Hit the bell notification to be notified of all of our upcoming live streams and videos. And be sure we do got videos coming. I'm getting back on it. We're getting things figured out. You know, as we roll into this next year, 2025, we're going to have some great urban gardener videos, garden journals, all sorts of that sort of stuff. So look forward to some videos that I've got like a few already locked up that I got to get finished up and put out anyways. So we'll be looking forward to that coming up real soon. So that's a real great reason to hit that bell notification so you can be notified when those all come up. And be sure to share with all of your friends our great, fun Let's Get Growing show right here on the Urban Gardener channel every Saturday and Sunday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern. We're here every weekend, just having great gardening conversations with some of the great gardening creators on YouTube and social media, authors, podcasts, all of it. We got the best guests right here on the Let's Get Growing show here every Saturday and Sunday. So definitely be sure to, like I said, hit that subscribe button so you can come follow along with us here for sure. And real quick, big, huge shout out to all of you who are watching us on our replay. Thank you so much for joining us here today on your time. And I hope you enjoy the show here. And if you do have any questions, comments, or anything to say, let me know what you got growing on in your garden or anything like that down in the comments below. I love to hear from you. Even if you're just dropping by to say hi, please let me know you're here. Please let me know what you think of the show, all that sort of stuff. Get down in the comments. I love hearing from all of you for sure. And if you are here joining us live on the show, though, too, definitely get into the chat there. We want to hear from you. We want to hear about what you got going on. Everybody else love to chat with you as well throughout the show there. So if you do have any questions or comments or anything like that, though, too, for Gardener Scott, especially later on here in the show, put those questions in big, bold capitals letters so that I can see the questions from the regular conversation as well, too. And then we'll hopefully be able to make sure that we get your questions asked and answered with our good friend Gardener Scott here just a little bit later in the show. And also, you want to follow the links down below in the description. We've got some links down there to all of the things we've got for Urban Gardener, social media and all that sort of stuff, similar to videos and all of that. Look forward to lots of new great stuff and things like that coming out on like our Instagram, our Facebook page, all that sort of stuff coming up here as we're moving towards the 2025 season. So definitely follow some links down below if you haven't checked out any of those other things that we've got growing on here for the Urban Gardener channel, as well as we do have links for our guests. We always have links for our guests right down below the description. And go over there. Go subscribe if you haven't subscribed, or even if you are subscribed, go over to one of the recent videos. Let them know that you saw them here on the Let's Get Growing show. That would be so awesome. I really appreciate it when you all do that. thank you all so much again for being here with us today. Let's see, we had some really great weekends so far going on here. Yesterday, again, like I said, we're here every Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern. And yesterday we had a really, really great show. Back on the show with us yesterday was our good friend Tony O'Neill from Simplify Gardening. Tony O'Neill joined us yesterday during the midst of a massive storm, probably the biggest storm they've seen in most of Tony's lifetime. We talked a little bit about that. We talked all about gardening and growing, and especially Tony's specialty potatoes and all that sort of stuff in containers and things. So it's a really great conversation. You'll definitely want to go back and check that out, as well as at the beginning of the show for our Are You Following Me segment. We got to meet Michael Overstreet from the Garden Nerd channel. Michael gardens down in Arizona there and has a lot growing on there with the Garden Nerd. Lots and lots of trees and different things that he grows right there in that hot Arizona climate and everything too. So that was a really fun conversation. It was really awesome to be able to meet Michael there too. So again, you want to go back and check out yesterday's show to check out those conversations for sure if you haven't yet already. Awesome. And like I said, we here today on the Sunday edition of Let's Get Growing. And if you didn't get a chance to check out last week's Sunday edition of Let's Get Growing, we got to visit with on one of our garden roundtables. These have been so much fun throughout the gardening season here. We've really gotten into them over the last few months here too, to get a chance to bring a couple of past guests that we've had on the show, bring them together. We'll have a nice conversation about all sorts of different things growing on in our gardens. And like I said here too, last week we had with us Katrina from Sow and Tear and Ryan from Heavenly Hills Homestead joining with us there. And it was a really fun, great conversation. It's really awesome to be able to talk with them there. And again too, we'll have more and more of these great roundtables. Maybe we'll even expand it out, bring an extra person in there or something. Who knows what we'll do with that sort of thing come 2025, but you'll definitely want to stick around so that you can see for sure and not miss out on these great conversations. Also, too, every third Sunday of the month, we got Gardener Scott every second Sunday of the month. Every third Sunday of the month, we do our monthly gardening book club. The monthly gardening book club is a great opportunity for us to kind of get into some great gardening books and authors that are out there, and just a little bit different than your normal local community garden or book club in general that you might be a part of. Our book club here allows us the opportunity to be able to bring the author onto the show with us here, and along with my good friend Mark Boucher Colbert co-hosting with me here, we get to have a great conversation with them and interview them all about their books that they've written. And there's so many great, wonderful authors in the gardening community, and so many great books to cover. So we've got some really great ones. We're lining some up again too for 2025. But next week on next Sunday show, which will actually be our last show of 2024. So just to kind of remind you about that too. So next Sunday on the show, third Sunday of the month, our gardening book club, we will have with us Diane Meisler. Her book is Grow Your Soil. This has really been a really great book. I've been reading and digging into this the last week or two, all about the soil food web and, how to create your best garden ever, through soil care. I mean, it's where it all starts, so it's going to be a great, like I said, a great conversation. Can't wait to talk with Diane about this book and everything, and also have you guys all along with us as well, too. And also too, and just kind of to kind of talk a little bit here again about what's coming up as well too for us here on the show. Like I said, next week will be basically our last week for 2024. We're going to do on Saturday a special edition 2024 year in review show. We're just going to talk about, how awesome this year's shows have been. I mean, last year was great. It was awesome. It was a wonderful launch to our show, but year two for us has been doubly great. And I can't wait to talk about all of that with you, as well as we'll have with us our sponsor, Charles Charles Malky from Ivy Organic will be joining with us for a bit here live on the show, as well as one of our great contributors for the show throughout this year has been Sarah from Sarah Seed Shop at sarahseedshop.com. She will be joining with us a bit live too, and maybe do some live trivia, and maybe we'll have a couple of other folks as well to join with us for that year in review this next Saturday. So again, you don't want to miss out on that. We'll talk a little bit about this year. We'll talk a little bit more about what we've got planned and coming up and thinking about for the 2025 growing season as well. And then just like I mentioned too, for our Sunday edition, we'll have our book club, and then we'll take just a couple of weeks off. This is the big point here too, is last year, man, we got done towards the holiday season, and then I took like a couple of months off. I don't know what my plan was there really when it came down to it, but we took a couple of months off and then got started again for this year. And I really kind of did need some of that preparation time and all of that, but we've been rolling right along this year in 2024, having such a great time. We're going to try not take too much time off at all. We're going to get right back at it for our after New Year's. So right at it, I think right into the first weekend, right after New Year's, we'll be right back at it with some really great guests. I'm still working on a couple more confirmations to make sure we got that. I've got a couple of other great guests lined up for after that as well too. So again, you're not going to want to miss out. So like I said before too, you definitely want to make sure that you that you're subscribed, and more importantly, hit that bell notification so you can be notified of all of these great shows as they're coming up. So yeah, we got lots and lots of stuff growing on here, lots of great things, and man, it's so great, and more and more for you. Everything's been going really great. And let's see here. I want to make sure. Let's get in here and dig in and see who we got joining with us today on the show. And of course, right at the top, we have to say hi and thank our facilitator. She does such a great job. Jay Dixon joining us from Midwestern Ontario, Canada. Thank you, Jay, so much for being here and dropping in all those great links and helping move the conversation along in the chat there too. So yeah, thank you, Jay, and our other moderator, Adam Burley, joining us from right down the road here in Southern Oregon. It's in Central Point. Great to see you. Great to see you, Adam. Also, waking up bright and early from the future, we've got Rick joining us from Australia. Awesome. Thanks. Great to see you, Rick. Let's see who else we got here joining with us today. Big Will Dog, how you doing? Awesome. Great to see you here. We had Will on the show with us a couple of weeks ago as I opened up the show to all of you viewers, and we got a few of you to jump in and join with us for the conversation. So that's a couple weeks back there. You can go back and find that out and meet Will there, as well as we had David from Bowtie Life in the Garden. All right, let's see here. Make sure we get through here. Oh, Dusty joining with us. Awesome. Great to see you, Dusty. Thanks for joining the show today. It's great to see you here, as well as Jersey Girl. Awesome. Excellent. We got Geezer 244 joining us from hello from Pittsburgh, he says. Awesome. Excellent. This is great. It's good to see all of you here, and thank you again so much for all of your guys' support and really helping us grow the show this year too. It's been really awesome to be able to spend this year with all of you and get to talk with all these great gardeners. I see we do got David there from Bowtie Life in the Garden. He was on that show a couple of weeks ago as well too. Right on. Let's see here. Everybody's having a great conversation already. So we're going to get moving along today. It's Sunday. So one of the things we love to do here on Sunday is to catch up with my good friend, Mark Boucher Colbert in the garden. This week, he's talking a little bit about our guest from yesterday's book. We had Tony O'Neill on the show with us yesterday, and Mark's going to give us a little lesson right out of Tony's newest book.
Hey guys, good morning. I'm Mark Boucher Colbert, otherwise known as MBC, and you're in the garden with MBC. But clearly you're in my kitchen, so you can't be in the garden with NBC, except at this time of the year, really throughout the whole year. There's a whole other garden that lives up here. And this is the time when we get to reflect on what happened in the garden out there by going through some thoughts up here. So today's In the Garden of NBC is going to be about optimization of the garden using a scheme that was proposed by Tony O'Neill in this book, Simplified Vegetable Gardening. Now, if you've been tuning into our third Sunday monthly garden book group here on the Urban Gardener channel or on Let's Get Growing, then you might have seen us interview Tony O'Neill. Every month, Enoch and I interview an author of a really amazing garden-based book. But this one with Tony, I want to bring to your attention today because in this book, he offers a tenfold, he actually adds an 11th, but we're going to just say tenfold checklist for plant optimization. And you can see when I first read it, my marginal note was the gold. This is the gold because something like this is a conceptual framework that we're going to be able to use to pick apart the success or failure of our crops and to know why, which means we will be able to repeat successes and correct failures. That's the big problem, right? In gardening, we may have whatever kind of season we have, but we often don't know why, what contributed to it. And so we're left in the dark about how to either make it happen again or how to take corrective action. So this is the time of year, winter, when we can be going through our records, when we can be going through our memories. Heck, just walk outside, look at your garden, see what's sort of still dead there. And that can tell you and remind you what you planted and maybe bring back some memories from how the season was. However you want to do it, maybe you took pictures during the year. I hope you did that. Every once in a while, take a picture of your garden. Whatever it is, you want to be looking back at this time of year and trying to figure out why things went the way they did or didn't. Did you achieve the goals you had for your garden? Did you feel like you optimized the growth of things, or were a lot of things just struggling along? Let's dive into what Tony's offering us here and figure out why. Now, I've written these 10, and again, I'll say 11 because he adds one at the end. These 11 things on a cup, and you'll find out why I did that after, but let's just go through them. The first and the biggest band here is the genetics of the crop. So if you're trying to grow, for example, a Dill's Atlantic giant pumpkin, right, or let's just say a giant pumpkin, if you don't use the proper seeds, the proper strains of pumpkin, and let's say you plant like a Jack B. Little, like a little teeny ornamental pumpkin, guess what? I don't care if you're the best grower in the world, you'll never get a giant out of that because genetically it does not have the potential. Now, maybe after thousands and thousands of years of growing that pumpkin, you might get a genetic mutation and somehow that little pumpkin may put off a giant. It's possible, I guess. But over careful breeding over centuries or over decades, or even in a more scientific program on a shorter time span, has allowed us to select certain traits. And that's what we mean by the genetics, the potential of that particular strain or variety to achieve what we want to achieve. So you're not going to cry because you didn't get a big slicing tomato when you planted only cherries, right? That wasn't what was in the program. The genetic program did not call for a slicing tomato. It called for a little tiny snacking tomato. And similarly, you have to know like what was the potential of the crop you planted. How do you find that out? Well, you may want to read your seed catalogs, your seed packages, observe the crop as it's grown in other places, just to see like, what can I reasonably expect from this? Now, certain crops will perform better. Like I'm thinking of certain, maybe crops that are kind of weed-like or you see growing in the wild a little bit, like a dandelion, for example. When you take that into your garden, it may increase in size just because you've, again, optimized some of its conditions. So sometimes the potential can vary in terms of what you see out there. But if something has the potential to be big, beautiful, large, give heavy yields, oftentimes that's built in from the beginning. So make sure you're growing the varieties of crops that will set you up for success and that will match your intention. Good. That's more or less the first choice. After that, we're going to go through 10 factors. And, here Tony lists the 10 in 2 lists of 5. You can see he's got 2 columns here. And he's got above ground factors and below ground factors. So let's dive in here. I'm going to read them to you on my cup. First of all is light levels. This is an above ground factor. Air temperature, above ground. Above ground humidity of the air. The air flow, the ability of the air to move through, flow through, and carbon dioxide levels. Those are 5 above ground factors that contribute to plant optimization. Let's look at the below. Water or moisture level, soil temperature, nutrition, meaning the mineral nutrient portion of the soil, what the plant needs to get from the soil. He says root health. I might say that I think when you dig into his section on that, it's a little bit really more about soil structure, like the porosity, the ability of the soil to exchange gases and to take water in and hold on to it. But we could stay with his root health. I know what he means by that, but I might change a little bit just to focus. And then the soil biome, all living component of the soil, everything from the pill bugs, the red wigglers, the springtails, the bacteria, the fungi, the actinomycetes, all these components of the soil, the living component of the soil that we are understanding is really determinative of plant success. So these are 10 things: light, air temperature, humidity, airflow, CO2, above ground, water, soil temp, nutrition, root health, and soil biome, below ground. All these combine with the genetics of the plant to create optimization. Why did I write these on a cup? That's not usually where I take notes, right? I usually take notes on an index card or something. Because this corresponds with another illustration that is powerful that I saw many years ago that I want to combine these two. So let's imagine these cups more like barrels made out of staves, right? Out of these wooden slats. And we can think of these staves as being each part holds the whole optimization of the plant, right? If we have all of them functioning properly and we have all of them attuned properly, then that plant can really be everything it was meant to be by its genetic package. But when we try to fill a cup that has a major portion missing, like here I've taken a big chunk out of the soil biome. In fact, all I have is ME left. How could this happen? Well, it could happen through artificial fertilizers and synthetic pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, et cetera, et cetera. These things percolate down into the soil and they oftentimes kill things other than their target, or just the fertilizers themselves can be so concentrated in their application they can burn and kill things. So let's try to see how our plant will grow. Let's go backwards here a little. I'm going to raise it up. With some of the soil biome gone, here, I'm actually going to tilt my camera because part of this effect involves seeing what happens. Can we get a full cup? Of course not. And in fact, we barely get any, and then it's already overflowing. My God, I couldn't really fill up this cup, the plant optimization cup at all. And we can imagine, any other, here's soil nutrition. Got a bite taken out of it. We haven't paid attention to the soil nutrition. Maybe we didn't get that initial soil test. Maybe we've been growing heavy feeders in the area for a while without really replenishing. Here's light. Maybe we just didn't pay enough attention to the initial conditions in which we put our garden. When we sited it, we didn't pay enough attention to what would happen as the sun moved during the day. Or maybe we only had a limited space and it's like, all right, it's here or nothing. But that would explain why we can't get those tomatoes to fruit very well, for example, right? That we may not have enough light. We may need to shift our expectations and become expert lettuce growers or whatever it is. So this idea of a limiting factor, this is what we call a limiting factor. In other words, there's some piece of this whole that we really need for plant optimization that is missing to some degree or another. And therefore, the container just can't hold our expectation. So the water's like our expectation, and it's not going to reach the level we had hoped because some crucial factor is missing. So this is what I think is brilliant. Okay, that's enough of that. This is what I think is brilliant about Tony's system is that it gives us these 10. Again, remembering that the genetics is very important right there. You have to have the right stuff at the beginning. But then you can create a kind of a checklist for yourself. And above ground, below ground is a very convenient way to think about what's going on and see where can you make a difference in this. Now, you may not, for example, you might say, well, I don't have control of the air temperature. That's true, but you have control of when you plant something out. So by being sensitive to what the air temperature is doing, you can manage that. Or you may actually be able to control it because you can put on a cloche or some kind of a covering that will create a more favorable temperature in there. Now that could create additional problems. Maybe you'll raise the humidity level in there and then you have to deal with that. So some of these things they have interactions with each other, but still it just gives you a checklist: light, air temperature, humidity, airflow, CO2. How is all that above ground? What about moisture and water below, soil temperature below, the nutrition, the mineral nutrients, the root health, the overall structure and ability of the soil to create healthy roots, and then the soil biome? How are all those doing? What are your indicators? What can you do to improve those? I guarantee you that if you have the correct plant genetics for what you want, and you pay attention to all these 10 factors, you think your way through this and you kind of think through your system, you may need to do certain things like soil nutrition. Well, it's hard to tell without a chemical test. You may need to send your soil in for a soil analysis. So certain things are not just immediately apparent. But if you pay attention to these things and find out how to assess them, then you will have a very developed program for moving forward and making constant improvements, and for knowing why things succeeded, for knowing why things failed. That's so crucial. So again, this little system, I'm indebted to Tony O'Neill, who is one of our authors in the Monthly Garden Book Club. His book, Simplify Vegetable Gardening, broke this down for me in a really remarkable way, just with great clarity and great succinctness, listing 10 factors in addition to genetics that amount to plant success. Now, I'm going to put in a plug for next week's book group, which is with Diane Meisler and this book, Grow Your Own Soil, because like I said, there's 5 below soil factors, and this book is going to help you analyze most, if not all of those. So you'll have a way of determining how you're doing on all those below ground soil factors that are so crucial to optimization. So if you want your giant pumpkin or your beefsteak tomato or your incredibly producing zucchini plant or your successful overwintered broccoli, and you're not getting that, give yourself a little checklist. Think through the crucial factors that are important to plant optimization. Let me do it this way. Whoop. And don't write them on a cup. That's silly. But unless you're trying to show somebody the effect of a limiting factor being missing. Anyway, write them on a index card. Get out there in the garden with your checklist. Think it through. Think through how the season went. The garden is right here in your mind right now. We're almost around the corner, right? As soon as the new year comes, I'm starting to seed some of my earliest things. Definitely going to be seeding up some kale early in the season, some leeks. I put in some alpine strawberries because they take a long time to grow. Some violas, which are cold hardy and I love, and the restaurant loves the Noble Rot where I garden. Anyway, it's just right around the corner. So start thinking this through. This can apply to your greenhouse or grow space indoors too. The planting, the potting soil that you use, the quality of light. Like I said, this is gold, right? That's what I wrote in my marginal note. This is gold. So my thanks to Tony O'Neill for giving us the clarity of the system, and I hope you can put it into practice and generate super success in the coming season for your garden. This is In the Garden with MBC. I'll see you next time. Take care.
Hey gardeners, thanks for tuning in to our show today. We'll be right back at it here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a second here to highlight our regular videos and features here on the Urban Gardener channel. Our weekly garden journals, and our incredible featured visits. All right. There we are. Welcome back, everybody. What a great in the garden segment there from our good friend Mark Moshe Colbert, giving us some great knowledge and digging deep into Tony's book there. Again, like I said, Tony was our guest yesterday, and I can definitely see already during that segment he joined in with the chat there, everybody. So it's good to see Tony joining with us here. And he also says during that too that it was so weird seeing someone else talk about his book. Well, when you write a great book, that's kind of what happens. People got to talk about it. That's for sure. And that was such a great lesson there too from Mark talking about that. Also saw our good friend Christopher Bransdahl joining us all the way up from Norway there too. So great to see you, Chris. Thanks for jumping in and joining with us on the show here today, and great to see all of you as well here. I think who else we got in joining with us today? I saw someone else coming in. We got Gma Grows Hard in the Garden. Yes, excellent. Thank you. Thanks for joining with us here today too as well. It's great to see you here. And also you know, what are you going to do to optimize your garden? That was our question today. Jump into the chat. Let us know about what you got planned and thinking about, especially after seeing that cool little lesson from Mark. So jump in the chat there and let us know. Also, too, definitely you want to jump in the chat and ask some questions too, because we got a great segment coming up for you here. Like I said, we got Gardener Scott here in just a minute too. So if you do have any questions or comments or anything like that, or especially questions for Gardener Scott, because this is a whole Q&A show, jump into the chat there. And if you do have questions, put them in nice big bold capital letters there so that I can see the questions from the conversation, and then we'll try to get them featured here on the show here and ask Gardener Scott here in just a minute here. But yeah, what a great day here today. It's been a great weekend. Like I said, we got a lot of things growing on. It's we're moving towards a whole new year. Again, like I said, it's hard to believe that 2024 is already winding down. But you know, again, too, something I love to say about that sort of situation. We're winding down from one thing again, which gets us geared up to wind up for the next year as well too, because 2025 is just right around the corner. So all right, let's get moving on today, and let's get joining, because I can't wait. It's been a little while since we've seen this guy on the show. Let's get some garden questions answered with Gardener Scott. All right, everybody. Let's welcome him back to the show. Welcome back. Gardener Scott Wilson. Boy, it's been a while, but man, I've been looking forward to having you back on the show. So is everybody else. They've been asking about you and all of that too. So it's great to have you back. Thanks for joining us today.
Always good to be here. Just had a busy couple months, and on the second Sunday of the last 2 months, but we're here.
Yeah, we're back. We're back at it. We're going to be back at it for a while too, as well too. We got, and it's again too, just really great to hear and see you here on the show for sure. So right on. Again, as I've been talking about here, and we're winding up here the 2024 growing season right now.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about 2024 today. And then again, like I said, anybody got any questions or anything like that you'd like to ask, definitely jump into the chat there, and we'll get some questions asked here with Gardener Scott as well too. But yeah, let's start with that. How did the 2024 gardening season go for you this year, Gardener Scott?
It went great. I wanted to be on your show yesterday, but I actually had my garden club meeting,
Oh,
or I should say Christmas party meeting yesterday afternoon. And as we were all talking gardening stuff, you would do that at a gardening club Christmas party.
yeah.
We had a lot of similarities in my area as to what went really well. And one of the things that did extremely well for me, as it did with my fellow local gardeners, was peppers. I've had one
Oh,
of the
yeah.
best pepper years ever. The sweet peppers, the chili peppers, hot peppers, everything did extremely well. I did a video a little while back about my paprika because that was the big focus this year. I
Oh,
grew
yeah.
6 different varieties of Hungarian peppers, some sweet peppers, some hot peppers, and then dried them and made my own paprika. It was incredible. And so just all the way around, when a year ago I was talking about doing this, and it turned out so amazing that now I want to do it every year. It's just so successful. The
Yeah.
tomatoes were great this year. The squash did great this year. I actually had melons this year. It's so difficult to grow melons at 7,000 feet in Colorado,
Right.
and I had melons this year. So overall, it was a very successful year.
That's great. Yeah, I kind of have the same feeling here too. Peppers did pretty good this year, but tomatoes were my big thing this year, which was great because tomatoes have not been the thing for the last few seasons
Okay.
for me. As you know, in Southern Oregon, things have been heating up a lot more here, and really I found my key this last year was something I talked about last year as well too, leading up to this year, was to get them out a little bit earlier. Even if even if there's a frost coming up, tomatoes can handle like, somewhat cold, but if there's a hard frost, I'd get out there and do something, and luckily for me, getting them out early was the key because again, with changing weather patterns and things like that from year to year, that's something I was kind of noticing. I wasn't seeing too
Mhm.
much of that like hard enough frost in that 1 month before our last frost date. So getting them out that month before to give them give them a better chance for that roots to develop, the plant to get going, and that way,
Mhm.
so they're already starting to put off tomatoes, and we got a lot of good crop of tomatoes right before that really hot season really hit
Good.
us. So that was really good. And again, too, that's with the caveat of that, it could freeze, it could have a frost, that sort of thing, but you got to be willing to get out there and do what it takes to
Risk.
protect them. Take the risk, get out there and protect them if you've got to. But it's kind of, after this year, I kind of feel like it's almost necessary now in order to kind of compete with that hot season in the summertime.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I typically don't have a lead in to the summer here in Colorado.
Right.
Most gardeners know when the last frost is coming. They can gamble a little bit because it will stay warmer and they're able to do that. It's my crazy weather. We can have 6 inches of snow and a hard freeze the first week of June. And I mean, that's
Right.
just so typical. And so, yeah, I love the taking a risk and getting it out there.
Yeah.
I've learned, however, in my region that almost always when
Yeah.
I take a risk like that, that's the year we get the hard freeze and the snow late in the season. So
Really felt that way.
where you're growing, and that's a big part of the experience.
I was like, man, I'm gonna do this, and with all my luck, it's gonna be like freezing for a week straight, or something's
Yeah,
gonna
but it
happen,
worked.
and it worked out. And again,
Good.
too, it is about kind of taking the risk,
Yeah.
and
Now I have
again,
grown early like that. I, I I have used the wall of water system in the past.
yeah,
You surround your plant with basically a tube or a cylinder of tubes filled with water, and I I have grown tomatoes a month early, as long as they have that extra protection. And I've got some photos on the old blog I did years and years and years ago of the snow piled up around my tomatoes. But because they
yeah.
were surrounded by the wall of water system, they did just fine.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, they can handle a bit of cold. I mean, they are a warm weather crop, but they can handle a bit of cold, just not any of that hard freezing, this hard frosts, that sort of stuff can really do some damage. But again, if you're
Absolutely.
willing to take the risk and willing to do what it takes to get them going, and if you live in a warmer area where you have been dealing with issues of that high heat and your tomato plants are
Yeah.
dropping all those flowers and and not forming any fruits or anything, then that might
Yeah,
be
because
your method.
the Rogue Valley, as you well know, can get above 100 degrees and stay above 100 degrees for weeks at a time
Yeah,
in the summertime, and that's just deadly for most of the plants we're trying to grow in the garden.
yeah, yeah. Let's see. Dusty jumps in right away with a question here. Says, you said the water barrels cooled at night. Was that okay? No, I think that would be, was that in the summer? No, that would be the cold of cooler part of spring, right? Loud coming
Well,
out of winter.
also in summer, yeah.
Yeah,
So what I noticed, so it works both ways to the second part as well. Did they hold heat in winter to make a difference? So I did a
yeah,
video last year where I actually was tracking on a daily basis as the temperatures were dropping outside. And the water barrels I have in my greenhouse, and I have other containers as well. So I have about 250 gallons of water in my greenhouse. And with the water, I'm able to keep my greenhouse 30 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit warmer during the coldest days of winter than when I didn't have any water at all in the
yeah,
greenhouse. So it really is a dramatic difference in the winter. Still gets cold, still gets below freezing, but it doesn't get as cold as it used to without the water. But I also noticed that the heat of summer is less inside the greenhouse because a lot of that heat will build up during the day, and that's what really damages the plants. Well, the water will absorb some of that heat. And so this
yeah,
last summer, I noticed it was only about a 5 to 6 degree Fahrenheit difference with the water, but that's a big difference. So without the
yeah.
water during the summer, with all the vents open, the doors open, my greenhouse would be about 15 degrees Fahrenheit hotter than the outside air. With the water barrels, the temperature is about 10 degrees Fahrenheit warmer. So it's not a huge difference, but I have noticed both in the winter and the summer, the whole thermodynamic impact of the water really can affect the greenhouse.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here. John Jude was in just a little bit ago saying you had is it Thornburg terracotta tomatoes?
Yeah.
And then he's asked, what did you think about them?
I grew those not this year, but last year, and they were good. I have others that I liked better, but they performed pretty well in my garden, and they had a good color and they had a good taste. And this year, I was trying all new things. I started putting together my seed packets over the last couple of years because next year I want to plant the things I already have. Most of us are addicted to seed buying. And so every
Oh,
year
yeah.
we buy seeds. So this upcoming year, I'm planning to not buy any seeds because I have so many seeds. And the Thornburg terracotta is actually one of the ones I set to the side as a possibility to grow in this upcoming season. So, I don't necessarily put it in the top 5, but I might put it in my top 10 of tomatoes that I've grown.
Yeah, 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 definitely. And I'm kind of now kind of on the tail end of that, what you just talked about there too, about seeds and everything, because that was an issue that I faced a couple seasons ago. I was like, man, I got all of these seeds, I got tons and tons of them, and then I'm looking at new things, but then I'm looking at what I got and I'm like, you know what, you got to hold off for a season or two and let's grow some of this stuff we've already got. And that's kind of what I've done over the last couple of years. So I was looking at my seeds actually just the other day thinking, okay, well, so what are we going to do? Let's start looking in the catalogs and that sort of stuff. And I was like, oh man, I need some peppers this year. I went through a lot of my seeds, and for me, I don't say, there's some things I say seed of, but peppers are one of those ones I don't, because I
Sure.
grow so many of them them in containers right next to each other, all around each other, and that sort of stuff. So to avoid any sort of crosses or anything like that I'm not looking for in the next season, I always purchase new seed for my peppers.
Okay. Yeah, I have still a ton of pepper seeds. So, yeah, I think, and one of the reasons I'm going to try to take that attempt next year is if you're always growing something new, then you're accumulating a lot of seeds over the years. And I'm trying to narrow down which really are my favorites of the peppers, of the tomatoes, because I'm always trying something new. And so when I say like the Thornburg Terracotta is in my top 10, it might actually be higher than that, but it's been a couple years since I grew it. And this year I grew some like the Red Velvet, for instance, and the Isis Yellow that were just great in my garden. They performed well. They tasted great. I love the Black Krim tomato. And so there's so many of these different, both peppers and tomatoes that I like. I'm going to focus on those so that I can maybe refine the priority of the plants I grow, so that next year when I'm asked about a particular tomato, maybe I'll be able to quantify it a little bit better as to what my favorites are and which ones do best in my garden. And I think that's important for most gardeners, is to really identify what grows best in your garden, and because those are the ones that you should grow on a regular basis.
Yeah, for sure. There's one tomato I grow every single year. I've grown for many, many, many years. I got it from, I don't know if you ever heard of Ray Browning's channel from way back in the day, Praxis 55712.
Oh, Praxis, yeah. I know Praxis. I didn't remember his last name. But Ray from Praxis. That was one of the first channels that I subscribed to and started watching.
Yeah, he was one of the originals. He was one of the originals, and he was the one I went to when I was first starting learning, and he had a lot of tomato videos and all of that. But eventually I ended up getting some seeds of his Prax cherry tomato, and it's one of my favorites. I love it. It's really awesome, and I have it basically just volunteers in my garden anymore. I let a few of them drop in a certain area, and they just grow back every single year for me. Those are really great. But because of the heat and everything too, I've also kind of moved towards and trying to find varieties that are more heat tolerant, that are going to handle the heat just a little bit better. I found one called Big Red Chief, which has been my favorite now too. It's just really great. It just grows right through all of the heat without a problem, right out in full sun too, without any shade or anything. So it's been one of my best producers.
Yeah, the White Tomasol was one that I grew this year that was like that. It was actually a white, very, very pale yellow tomato, and it may have done the best as far as standing up to the heat and the wind and everything that hit my garden this year. And Black Krim, of course, has always been my favorite for the last 10 years, and so that's why I want to grow it again and actually compare it to some of these others that I'm also beginning to like.
Yeah, a few years ago I did and again too, it's probably one of those first seasons where I was dealing with this really extreme heat, just kind of really messing with the tomatoes and everything. But I did all black tomatoes. So like I had all in the back area there. I had about 5 or 6 different varieties of dark tomatoes, and Black Krim was one of them. And I remember it did really well.
I grew one this year. It was really interesting. It was Black Strawberry, I think was the name of it, I grew a couple of them. Indigo Strawberry. I forget exactly what it was. But it actually started off black.
Just started off black. Wow.
Yeah. Normally, like the Black Krim, they'll start off green, and then they'll, turn red and green and have that purple color. But these were actually very dark, like almost a true black as a cherry tomato to start with. And it took most of the season. They actually didn't do well. It took a long time for them to mature. But when they matured, they turned red. And I mean, it was bizarre. And they tasted okay. They had a really thick skin that I didn't like, and the flavor was okay. But it was just so odd. And a Black Hungarian pepper did the same thing. It was black when it was young, and then as it matured, it turned red. So I'd never seen anything like that in a garden. So that's why you
that's a
experiment
pretty
and see new
unique
things.
one for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
This one I had a really like too. It was out of the dark ones too. Was called Black from Tula is what I think, and it was a Ukrainian black tomato, and that was probably one of the more darker ones I've ever grown before too. Really great one.
Cool.
Right on, right on. Let's see.
Okay, what
Actually,
else?
I had a question here going back to the real quick, the heating water barrels. Let's see here. Would there be better efficiency in heating water barrels if contained in separate room because of venting in
In the
G8
greenhouse.
greenhouse?
Yeah.
There you go.
So the thing about the water, when you look at thermodynamics, and the whole idea of having the water in the greenhouse is because water is highly efficient as a thermal mass. It absorbs water, but or it absorbs heat, but most importantly, it retains that heat better than most anything else that we're going to have in the greenhouse. So metal, for instance, heats up very quickly, but it cools down very quickly. And concrete is a little bit slow, but when it heats up, it gets really, really hot, but it also cools down pretty quickly. Whereas water takes a lot of energy to warm up. And so using the sun as that energy to warm the water over the course of a sunny day is efficient. It doesn't cost you anything. The water, because it retains that heat and then releases it very slowly, is an efficient heat battery for a greenhouse. If you have electricity, you can use a heater to heat the water. But again, it takes a lot of energy to warm up that water. And the water, or the heat that's being released from the water into the cool air, is what some of us are after by having water in the greenhouse. It becomes relatively more efficient to heat the air. If you're going to heat something with electricity, if you heat the air, well, then that heat from the water is not needed. It's not being released. So it takes a lot more energy to heat the water than it does to heat the air. And so it's kind of a balance as you try to figure out the most efficient thermodynamic interface within your greenhouse. And that's one reason why, commercial greenhouses have heaters, often propane heaters that are heating the greenhouses. They're not heating water and then using water to heat the greenhouse. They're actually heating the air. And that tends to be a more efficient use of the energy that we're going to use in the heating process. I have an unheated greenhouse, no electricity, which is why I rely so much on the water.
Yeah, right on. Excellent. And so let's see here. I think there was another one that we got in here. Serena jumped in asking just a little bit ago, do zinnia seeds require cold stratification to germinate? And if so, could I just plant some in the green stock during winter to get it done?
So most of the perennial seeds, or the seeds of perennial plants, are going to need cold stratification. Most of the seeds from annual plants might benefit a little from cold stratification, but it's not necessarily required. So zinnias kind of fall into that gray range where they might benefit from a little cold stratification, but when you buy a pack of zinnia seeds at the store and plant them in your garden, you get almost 100% germination, and the seed producers are not doing cold stratification on them. So nothing wrong with sowing your seeds in fall or winter for any of those perennial or annual plants. It's just generally the perennial plants that benefit from the cold stratification.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So again, we kind of started off by talking about, like how did the 2024 season goes? We talked a little bit about some of your more successful things like that. But as gardeners, one of the best things that we can share with others are what are some of those failures that happened
Oh,
in
sure.
the gardening season. So you had any of those? Any sort of things that
There's
you know,
always failures. In fact, I did a video at the end of the season where I listed a bunch of the failures, a bunch of the things that went wrong in the
yeah,
garden this year. And so I'm sure Jay will be on top of it and actually put a link up to that
yeah,
video here pretty soon.
for sure.
Uh, and and so it's it's all relative. So the most recent thing that I didn't include in that video was in my greenhouse. And so in recent years, I've been very good about looking at the forecast, about being ready to protect my plants. And I got busy. I think I might have been gone. I might have gotten lazy. I'm not really sure. But I missed a really cold snap that was coming up and didn't protect the plants in my greenhouse. So I still had tomatoes on the vine of my tomato plants inside the greenhouse, and I didn't harvest any of those tomatoes. So I lost, a few dozen
Wow.
tomatoes by
Wow.
not looking at the forecast and being aware that it was going to be as cold as it was. And so that's the most recent thing. I missed a late harvest that I could have gotten that would have been wonderful.
Right.
And that was just sorry to see. And throughout the garden, same story, just not harvesting as much as I should have harvested. And so there were plants that ended up still on the vine when that first cold snap hit, because I missed that it was coming, because I either wasn't here to protect the plants, or it actually got colder than it was supposed to get. So those are the kind of things that you have complete control over. And then when it
Yeah.
happens, you just kind of have to kick yourself that something like that happened. But other
Gardener
things,
error, right? A lot of things, a lot
exactly.
of failures just come down to our own, gardener error when it comes
Yeah.
down to it, right?
And almost always my raspberries this year did not do well, and it was completely gardener error. I have
Yeah.
talked before in my own live stream about the raspberry cane borer, which is an
Mhm.
insect in my region that will the adult will lay eggs into the raspberry canes, and then the larva will overwinter inside the canes and then chew their way out the next year and just devastate the crop, because all of the canes will fall to the ground. And at my previous house, I discovered that. And in the garden, I learned to cut the canes down every year. I grow a type of raspberry heritage variety that you can just chop down at the end of every season, and it starts all new the
The
next
whole
year.
thing, you just go ground level?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
So
that's
you
how
don't
you
need
deal
like,
with it.
what is it, Primocane, or what is
That
it?
well, yeah. And so most, a
Yeah.
lot of the raspberries that people will grow will be on the second year, the flora cane.
Yeah, yeah.
And so the variety I have is the Primocane variety. It grows in the first year. And so I know to do that.
Right.
And now moving to this newer garden, and I've done that in recent years, but I thought,
Yeah.
I'm miles away from where I used to live. There's no other gardens anywhere near me,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to cut the canes back. I'm going to save myself some of that effort. Sure enough, this year I had the raspberry cane borer pop
They
up,
they
devastating
find
my
you.
raspberry
They
crop.
find you.
Yeah, and it's insane that when a pest is in a region, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It isn't hopping from garden to garden. It's like orbiting over, just using its radar
Yeah.
miles away to find whatever its target crop happens to be. So
Yeah.
that was another big fail. A lot of
You
good
like to
things
imagine
happen.
there's like some big central, like, you think of like the one of those big NASA rooms, and they got like
Yeah.
screens everywhere, and pests are like, oh no, look over here, and
Yeah,
they send
exactly.
they send them over and drop them in.
Yeah.
It's what it seems like. It's like, where do these come from? What do we do? And in a similar situation on my strategy of not growing squash for a year because, I was trying to think of like, well, let me interrupt the life cycle. This is what we're trying to do when we're dealing with pests, So I was like, well, if I don't grow any squash for a year in this space, maybe that'll help and pull it back and I won't have that sort of issue again and all of that. But all I did was not grow squash for a year because that's what happened, and the very next year after that, I grow squash and there it is. Same problem again,
They're
they're going to find you one way or another. Yeah, definitely. And real quick though, too, just before we jump off of the raspberries there, because I think an interesting point, because this then becomes to variety, right? Because again, we were talking about like you got the primocane is the first initial cane, right?
Yeah.
And then that one's in the second season becomes a floricane, right?
Yeah. So most of those types of brambles, the fruit that come from those like thorny canes. Blackberries are that way. So most blackberries will fruit on the second year. So you have to leave the cane up, that primocane, and then in the second year, the cane will grow more, and that's the floricane, and that's the part of the plant that actually flowers and then fruits. And so raspberries, depending on the variety, will do the same thing. You can cut the tip off. That's generally what you do just to manage the size of the plants. And so you prune off the tip, but you keep most of the cane in place, and then the floricane develops as part of the second year growth.
Yeah. But then this variety you're using to combat this pest, though, is a different variety where
so heritage.
Okay.
Heritage is the variety, and now it will also flower on the floricane, and so I learned that last year actually, and did some of it this year as well. So on the first year primocane, it will flower and it will fruit. If you leave that cane in place and you don't have the raspberry cane borer, the next year it will continue to grow from that cane and will flower and fruit. And so the key difference when you're choosing a variety, if you don't have a pest like that, is often called a summer bearing raspberry versus a fall bearing raspberry. And so because the cane has to grow from nothing all the way to harvest with a raspberry on it, it takes longer. And so my raspberries, I'm not harvesting the fruit on those raspberries until the end of September, maybe early October, because it takes that long for the plant to grow and develop. Whereas if you have a variety that is fruiting on the second year, you're harvesting those in June, because as soon as the spring warms up, that cane starts growing, it sends out its flower, and you get an early crop. So that's the key difference between the different types of varieties, is when you're actually able to harvest the fruit on those canes.
Yeah. So there you are. So definitely it's a good idea. I think those just sound like a great variety just in general. Why not just go there instead of worrying about the other ones where you got to wait for the second season, right?
Great taste, good size, and it's easy to manage because you just chop them all down and never have to worry about a pest again.
Yeah. I got to look for that variety. Heritage, you said, right?
Yeah,
excellent. So, okay. So again, we talked about a little bit of the failures, successes, 2024 season. Like I said, we're wrapping up and kind of getting ready and thinking about it. What out of 24 to the 2024 season, and I know we talk about this all the time. In fact, I repeat this a lot, because gardening is a constant learning process for us.
Sure.
Now, for me, I'm just over maybe a decade or so of growing my own food and gardening and that sort of stuff. You've got years and years on me, and I know that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned from you before too, though, is that we're always learning. Even most experienced gardeners like yourself are always learning. So, and as we're wrapping up the 2024 season, what would you say would be one of your biggest lessons learned in this 2024 season?
Yeah, the thing I think that really hit home well this year in particular was planning. I talk all the time about planning your garden, and the key lesson is that there's really no limit in how far out you can plan. And
Right.
so when I moved to this house that I'm in now, just over 5 years ago, I came out with a master plan, and I called it my 5-year plan. And I made videos about that, of course, because this is a picture of my garden behind me from just this last week. But when I moved here, there was nothing. It was completely bare. So I determined where all my beds were going to go, where my greenhouse was going to go, years before any of it was in place. And then
Oh, wow.
each year I added more to it. But the piece that really gave me that great feeling as to the effectiveness of planning was that in that first year, I knew that I was going to have a gazebo in the very center of my garden. And I didn't know exactly what it was going to look like. I just knew a pergola or a gazebo was going to be in the exact center of my garden. And I wanted it surrounded by fruit bushes.
Yeah.
So 5 years ago, in that first season that I was starting the planting and starting to put plants in the ground, I put in 16 fruit plants. I put in 4 aronia, 4 gooseberry, 4 currants, and 4 honeyberries. And I put them in quadrants that were going to surround the gazebo. Now, the gazebo didn't go in until this last year. So those fruit bushes have been growing for 4 years. But when I put them in, I measured the entire garden space. I measured exactly where that gazebo was going to go. I measured where those plants were going to be in relation to that future project 4 years later, so that I
Wow.
would get 4 years of fruit bush growth before the structure went into place. And when it was all said and done, I was within 6 inches of my original plan. And that was only because I modified the paver layout at the last minute, or else it would have been perfect. And so
Yeah.
now I've got fruit bushes surrounding my gazebo that are producing, had a great harvest of gooseberries this year, had a great harvest of currants. And if I hadn't have done that, if I had waited until I put the gazebo in, and
Yeah.
it took almost 5 years for me to be able to get that project going, and then planted, it would have
Yeah.
been another 3 or 4 years before I got any fruit on those plants. So, I mean, that's how effective a plan can be if you're serious about it. And
Yeah.
if you do the measurements and you do all the calculations, I effectively saved myself years by putting the plants in before any of the structures went into place.
Wow, that's a good lesson right there for sure. So yeah, if you're, if you've got a space and you've got ideas for things that you're going to be able to do in the future, think about how your plants are going to be incorporated with that,
Mhm.
and then maybe do some planning on them beforehand.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's great. That's great. I just say that, we kind of already talked a little bit about my lesson learned and stuff is taking just a little bit more risks this year and doing some things to kind of try to get ahead of some issues I've had before. And yeah, so, but yeah, it's nearly winter time here. In fact, let me get here. I want to get in. I know Serena had another question we wanted to jump into there. So I want to make sure we get that in here real quick. How cool or warm does the soil have to be to plant like bok choy or kohlrabi? Do seeds require cold stratification?
So they can handle some cool temperatures. And again, think of those as annuals. Anything that we're
Yep.
growing in our vegetable garden, think of those as annuals, and they don't need cold stratification. And so, I mean, you can put them in the refrigerator if you want, but it's not really going to affect the germination of how they're growing. Generally, when we're growing our vegetable gardens, for best results, the soil temperature should be about 60 degrees Fahrenheit. It's about 12 or 13 degrees Celsius. And even for those cool season crops like that, you'll have better germination and better initial growth if you wait until the soil temperature is about 60. You can get by with less than that. Most of, when you talk about the brassicas and spinach and lettuce and radish and kohlrabi, they'll germinate when it's 50 degrees soil temperature, 10 degrees Celsius. But if you can wait that extra little bit, you'll have better success.
Yeah. And then probably another good reason for, maybe like, again, part of that little planning ahead idea though is like let's think about this, maybe do some indoor stuff, get it kind of started in a little bit warmer area and then transplant them out there, so that, like I said, it's a germination at that temperature, but the plant themselves can handle cooler temperatures than once they're growing and established.
Yeah, because when you look at the charts, and you can find charts online about all of these different plants. For instance, spinach can germinate at 34 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
Just above freezing.
Wow.
Spinach will germinate. But it takes like 60 days for it to germinate at that cold temperature. It's very slow to develop. Whereas if you look at like the spinach chart, it'll germinate at 40 degrees Fahrenheit soil temperature, and that'll still take 4 weeks. When the soil warms up, the germination time decreases. And so when you get to about 60 degrees Fahrenheit of soil temperature, the seeds are germinating in like 3 or 4 days in some cases. And so your choice is to go ahead and put those seeds in the ground when it's still very cold, and it will take a long time to germinate and for that seedling to grow, or just wait a month for the soil temperature to warm up and then put the seeds in the ground. And you're basically going to be right where you would have been if you had started too early.
Yeah. That's a good idea right there too. And again, spinach, I'm thinking about as you're talking about how long it takes in that cold temperature that they like cool temperatures. They can handle these really cold temperatures, but man, they're one of those finicky things when it starts warming up. It's amazing like how, I don't know, it doesn't even seem very warm out and those things start bolting.
Yeah. And so that's when you try to find a variety that is slow bolting, and I grow a slow bolt spinach, and then also trying to find that happy spot where you either plant when the soil is warm enough that it germinates quickly and then grows quickly and then you can harvest it, or you start it ahead of time. And spinach can be finicky about transplanting because it tends to have a bigger root and doesn't always transplant well. But you can put a hoop covered with plastic over your beds to warm up the soil during those coldest months, because they'll handle the cold temperature at night, but that germination temperature really can be important for the best success. They'll do okay. It's just a question of whether you want it to be fast or not.
Yeah, that's right, for sure. Right on. So like I was saying, nearly winter time. It's just right around the corner, which means it's nearly the end of the year, but it's still fall. We're going into winter. What should we be doing in the garden right now?
So I had a wonderful morning this morning. It was gorgeous. We have a storm blowing in with some really extreme cold temperatures, but this morning was beautiful, sunny. I went out and I finished cleaning up my garden. So this picture is of my garden behind me is from last week, but it looks completely different now because I've cleaned up all the plants. I've covered all of my beds with leaves and straw mulch, and I don't have to worry about growing anything. It's just a matter of getting the beds ready for spring. And today was an ideal opportunity for me to do that. So now my beds are ready. I don't have to do anything in my garden until we start getting those warmer soil temperatures in spring, and I can start looking at putting seeds in the ground. They've been amended. That's another big thing. I'm a huge advocate of amending in the fall. My my beds have gotten too cold. They've actually started to freeze. So I already did my amending a few weeks back. But amending, getting organic matter into the soil, and then if you can plan for it, do a cover crop, put some green manure plants in that will be part of a biomass when you turn them into the soil in spring. And if you haven't done that, like I did, put the straw, leaves, grass, whatever you're using for a mulch, so that you're protecting the soil and protecting your beds going into next year, the springtime. And then I've already started going through my seed catalogs. Now, even though I'm not planning on buying any seeds, I'm still looking at the seed catalogs because
Yeah,
all
yeah,
of my favorite catalogs have wonderful information. Some of them
yeah,
have recipes to follow, but they also give me some ideas and reminders. And
yeah.
I was looking at one of the catalogs recently and thought, oh, I think I have that, and went and sure enough, I've got hundreds of seed packets and I've forgotten what seed packets I have.
Right.
Going through the seed catalog to either remind yourself what you already have or order more is also another
Mhm.
great activity starting at this time of year.
Yeah, yeah. Again, too, that kind of leads into what my next question would be there too, is that that's kind of part of what should we be doing to prepare for next year and next growing season at this time of year?
Yeah, it's a little late to get the bargains. And
Yeah.
if you plan well enough, you can pick up uh, compost and plants and all kinds of things at the end of the season because the garden centers are trying to clear up space for the holidays. But there's a few places out there that you might still be able to get some bargain basement prices on things that you can use in the garden. Tools, getting the tools that you're going to need is always good at this time of year for the holidays. If you can ask, put on your wish list,
Yeah.
the tools that you're going to need for next year. Getting all that stuff set up right now is a great idea. And then accumulating the seeds and coming
Yeah.
up
Yeah.
with your plan. As I've shown in a number of my videos, I start this time of year developing a general plan. I want to grow tomatoes. I want to grow peppers. I want to grow squash. I want to grow whatever. And write it down. Put together your list of things that you plan to grow. And then over the course of the next month or two, refine that list to which varieties you want to grow. And then as you get into the spring, about time of actual planting, that's when you can spend time to figure out how many plants you're going to grow. So I take that phased approach. I don't plan everything all at once. I
Yeah.
just start very broadly and then begin to narrow it down so that by the time I walk out to my garden and put the seeds in the ground, I know that I'm going to grow 24 tomato plants. 2 of them are going to be black krim, 3 of them are going to be sun gold, whatever.
Hmm.
It's just a continual process. I think the idea of planning is just so daunting for so many
Yeah.
gardeners that they don't plan effectively because they think they have to do it all at once.
Right.
And you really don't. Make it easy. Just spread it out over time. And the seed catalogs really help me with my planning as far as prompting the ideas of how many plants I'm going to have of all the very general categories.
Yeah, that's a good thing. A good seed catalog is going to be a good education as well too.
Yep.
And again too, I think an important point you're making there too is that right now is great time for inventory of like everything you can think of. Just anything that's involved with your garden, like you said, tools,
Yeah.
seeds, soil compost, all sorts of different things. Do you need structural things and all of that sort of stuff where it comes to your garden, and create a good inventory of that. One of
Yeah.
the things that, yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'd used a bag that was in my shed that I had collected a month ago of dried leaves, and
Yeah,
so that's all. That's I mean, you can plan well in advance, and that's why I was talking about the gazebo. There's no
yeah,
limit on what you plan for,
yeah,
and so at the end of the season, I collect and save leaves
yeah,
and dried grass clippings to add to the garden. And I still have more bags for next year to use
yeah,
as a mulch. I went ahead and, I've got compost, I've got leaf mold, I've got all of that stuff ready to go now, even though
yeah.
I know I'm not going to use it until April, May, and June.
Yeah. I've actually been talking about that the last couple of weeks. It's leaf time for us here in my area right now. And all throughout my neighborhood, everybody's collecting their leaves and putting them in these nice bags and packaging them up just nice and neat for me so that I can go walk around the
There you go.
neighborhood and grab up bags. And I'm that guy who's going over to my neighbors, grabbing a couple of bags and walking down the street with piling them up in my yard. And then I use my mower to kind of mulch them down, and then I rebag them. Is part of what you're talking about, planning, because I'm going to use this as mulch throughout my gardening season next year as well.
Exactly.
I've covered everything up that needs to be covered out in the garden right now. And then I have a bunch of extra that I'm going to use because by next spring, most all that's going to be broken mostly down.
Yeah.
And when I start replanting new plants into that soil, I'm going to tuck them in with all of that new or leaf mold that I saved from the fall. So again, part of planning and a good thing to do there too as well, is thinking about those things that you can collect and do and put to use for your next season as well there.
Mm-hmm.
And also another thing you were touching on there too is a part of planning too and thinking about next season. As well as, we talk about journaling and doing that sort of stuff, but I don't think we talk enough about like mapping. I do a lot of mapping. So, I've got different garden spaces, whether it's around here or the one I've got over at my friend's place too. But I just create little maps. I draw them out and I just draw out little things, and then I'm fortunate enough. I got a little copier, scanner thing too. So I'll draw a little map of what it looks like. I'll scan out a few copies of it, and then I'll just go through and just start going, okay, well, we can put this here, this, and I'll just kind of see where things fit, where they go. Maybe I've planned it out and got one, and that's why I got extra copies. And so I'll go, oh, you know what, maybe this and that, and then I'll go and I'll redo that until I finally get the one I'm the master map, and this is it. This is what we're gonna do. And I think that's a good idea for people to do as well too, is just kind of map out and kind of just ponder and think about what the space could do. Maybe you're adjusting or moving crops from different parts of your garden. It's grown this year that last year, will it work over here? And you just got to think about how it works with other things. And again, it's a part of, it's like doing a puzzle in a way.
Oh yeah.
It's kind of like fun, we're having fun. We're creating a puzzle to create this really cool picture, a complete picture.
And the picture changes. I think that's one of the great things about gardening is, the basic structure, once you get it into place, the hardscape will stay mostly permanent, but everything around it can change from season to season. Like you said, you move the plants, you try new plants, you're doing different things, and every year is a puzzle putting it together. But next year's picture is going to be different as you put together your puzzle. The basic foundation in the garden, it usually stays pretty consistent. But yeah, I do the same thing. I will jot down ideas, and some of them are colors even, talking about the zinnias, for instance.
Right. See, again, part of the puzzle. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, I was talking about it yesterday at the garden Christmas party. I did a purple garden with my granddaughters a few years back, and we grew purple potatoes and purple kohlrabi and purple okra and purple beans and purple carrots, and it was all just part of that puzzle in that year. Everything was purple. You can do the same thing throughout your garden from season to season. Grow all white flowers one year, all purple flowers the next year, do a rainbow the year after that. And just have a lot of fun with it. But it does start with that planning so that you can make it happen.
Exactly. And kind of like I was mentioning earlier, did the all dark tomatoes a couple seasons back ago, and again too, and thinking about color palettes and all that sort of stuff are just great ways again to just have some real fun with the gardening experience, and especially for those who live in colder regions where you are kind of just stuck in the house and and having to plan out your next garden season. Unfortunately, in a sense, that's where we are. But we get a lot of people that we talk with as well too that live in these more southern areas, and they get to garden year round. So they're lucky. That's great if you get to do that and all that stuff. So they're planning and moving and continuously doing things and stuff. But even mapping and journaling and doing those sort of things can be really helpful in all gardening cases.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. So let's see. So again, too, we're looking forward to 2025 garden season. You got any big plans, any big thoughts of what you're gonna do, or?
Yeah, so I have a major project going on. I haven't really talked much about it, but and you can see just in front of my greenhouse, I'm building a secret garden, a hidden garden. And so it's going to be a fenced in area. And I've got the basic framework up. I still have a lot more work to do in it. I've been working on developing the soil in that area for 3 years now. So for 3 years, I've had leaves and pine needles and bark all stacked a foot deep as it's
Yeah.
breaking down and benefiting the soil underneath. And now I'm fencing in that area. I'm going to add just a beautiful water feature. Haven't figured out all
Oh,
the plants yet. There'll be a sitting space. You'll see all that in my
oh my,
videos to
that
come, of
sounds.
course. But that's my big project moving into 2025. That'll be the last piece of my 5 year plan as far as putting the structure together. And because once the
Wow.
structure's together, then the plant part is relatively easy. I mean, you really
Yeah.
do have to select the right varieties for where you garden. But I'm looking forward to developing that space, and hopefully, I'll get some of those plants in. That's another reason I'm going through the seed catalogs, is to try to get ideas of some perennial flowers and
Yeah.
some vines that'll be growing up the sides of these fences. And then back to the planting idea, I actually planted a climbing rose bush and a honeysuckle vine this year before that structure is in place.
Right.
So I have put up the fence posts. I still need to put up the fencing, but early this season, the plants, at least on the front side of that space, are already in the ground. So by
Wow.
the time I get that fence constructed next year, the plants will have something to grow up. And so I'm just really looking forward to that space because I think it's going to be incredible. It's going to be the showcase of my garden,
That's right.
and because the gazebo is in the very center of my garden, what I've
Yeah.
designed, and the reason I call it a hidden garden, you can only access this space from the gazebo. You have to walk to the center of the garden
Oh,
and
nice.
then go through what's going to be a very small hidden entrance to get into this area with water and
Oh,
plants and
wow.
flowers. And yeah, I love the planning and the building of the garden, and this is just really, I think, one of the most amazing things that I have in my mind that I now have to
Exactly.
put in place in the garden.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I got to get out there and come sometime, but I'll have to make sure I
That's
get
right.
after you get out there and see your garden sometime after that's up, because that would be just
Absolutely.
amazing to check out and see. When you're talking about, because I've got a bunch of different little water fountains and things that I've done and created little water structures. I mean, just hearing water,
Yeah.
and just that sort of thing. Are you thinking about like a waterfall, or
Yeah,
is
I'm
it kind of
thinking
like a
about
pond, or?
like a wall, like a waterfall that will actually have some
Yeah.
height to it.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
I have water features every year in my garden, but they're very small. They're focused on just some insects and small animals. But this will be a focal piece, like
Yeah.
almost like a structure that is art in the middle
Yeah.
of the garden with the sound as part of that.
Exactly. Again, too, it's great to, we in fact we touched on this yesterday, but in my back patio area, I've got a nice bench. It's kind of like almost center of everything, so I can just kind of sit, and it's great to just
Yeah.
kind of sit in your garden,
Oh, absolutely.
relax, just enjoy the space you've created and everything. But to accent that with like a waterfall and a water feature in that trickling water is just amazing. Sometimes I can just get out there in the evening too, and just
Yeah.
it's just awesome. It's a great space when you do that.
And it's gardeners really benefit from it. When I was running the school garden, I built a sensory garden for the
Yeah,
students, and it was divided into 5 areas with a little walkway between it. And sound was a very important part of it. I had flowers, or flowering plants that would attract bees and hummingbirds, and I put a bench right next to those flowers, so you could actually sit and close your eyes and hear the bees and hear the hummingbirds. And just off to the side, and I designed it in such a way that the volume of the noise was pretty equal, but I had a little bubbling rock. And so you could sit in that space and hear the water and hear the insects, and then you throw in the aromas of all the different plants.
Oh,
and
yeah.
and what I discovered, I mean, I did it for the students, but I also did it for my own benefit as well. But the students that were on the spectrum in particular
Mhm.
just gravitated to that space. And there were some students that had some really difficult problems with communicating and with controlling their temper and things like that during the school day. And they could go out to that space, and it would calm them for the entire day. And
Oh,
so, we as gardeners can sit and realize how important it is to use a garden space for our sake, but non-gardeners as well can
yeah.
also benefit from, like you're talking about, a place to
Mm,
just sit and
yeah.
just
Good
absorb
sense.
all of that.
A bit of basically garden therapy, just a sense of, and one of the things I just love is like about gardening. Again, too, it becomes, I think, again, what seals the deal for gardeners is when we catch on to that aspect of what we've been
Yeah.
doing with, or what is, starts out as maybe a hobby or maybe a mission to grow food or something like that. And then when we get through that process and those first couple of seasons, we start to learn and realize all these other beneficial factors we get from our garden.
Yeah.
And that big one is what it does to us in our, I like to say our soul and our
Yeah.
mind and our, it just calms thoughts. It just, all that sort of stuff that we get from the garden, and can almost be, and especially in the world we live in today, can almost be one of the more important factors of what we get
Oh,
out
yeah.
of our garden, right?
Yeah, I think the mental well-being that our gardens give us is immeasurable, and particularly with whatever's happening in your life. All of us have something that
Mhm.
we'd like to get away from, and going to the garden is a nice place to go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's why I call it the best common ground we can find is our garden, and it's
There
just
you
a
go.
exactly. And yeah, so lots, man, that's really great. And again, too, look forward to seeing some of those videos and everything that you do on that. Let's see. I think there was a question here. Let me get back to this here real quick. Yeah, Big Will Dog was asking both of us here. Do either of you, me or Scott, have any municipal composting sites provided by your city? And he says, I do, and can get leaf mold there if needed.
Wow, nice. We
Yeah.
have a service in my city where you can get mulch from the tree uh, part of, or tree cutting part of the city, where they'll cut down the trees that are interfering with roads or about to fall down, and they'll chip those up, and so you can get the mulch for free. There used to be a compost operation, but that is no longer available for free. But
Right.
leaf mold, that would be fantastic. I'd love to have that opportunity, but no, I don't have that.
Yeah, yeah, the idea, something that where we get it back for free, that sort of thing. Yeah, similar situation for me. I mean, they that's why they got all the bags of leaves out
Yeah,
here. We have our yard waste things, and then they make in the city and the whoever it is they work with and that sort of thing, create a space out there where they make, and it's really inexpensive. It's far more inexpensive
nice.
than what you'll find at other places and stuff. That's probably one of the better benefits of it. But they'll turn all of the waste that most of us who don't garden or are just doing yard work and that sort of stuff into some compost and all of that. One of the other things I've done, and I went down and met an organization down in Los Angeles a couple of years ago too, and found out actually this last year that there's been one of the organizations here locally does that sort of thing, but it's the idea of collecting food scraps, kitchen scraps and food scraps from folks, and diverting it from your trash can and then bringing it to whatever their facility is. It's LA
Yeah.
Compost was the place that I visited down in Los Angeles that did this, and I went to one of their events. and it's, you know, a bunch of people who, you know, maybe apartment dwellers, house, you know, people who don't have a compost pile or a place to create a compost pile or something, but they would bring in all these pails and
That's
buckets
great.
and different things of kitchen scraps, and then this organization turns all of that into new garden soil and creates that sort of thing. And again, it's at a cost, but I think it's kind of cool that they're diverting it, you know, and doing that sort of thing, and giving some giving people a place to go with some of that stuff to create,
Nice.
you know, more soil and that sort of thing as well. Yeah. So yeah, just look out for those sort of organizations locally and everything too. And I'm
Yeah.
sure that they got them. And two, if you maybe your city does have some sort of program or something like that where you can get that, maybe even low income sort of parts of those programs where maybe you'll get a discount or something on some sort of a city made compost or anything. But yeah, just find the number for your city and give them a
And there's a
call.
lot
Find out.
more popping up, you know, around the world that
Yeah.
there are organizations that are doing this. And so if you're lucky enough to live in an area that has one, absolutely take advantage of it.
Yeah, yeah. And let's see here. Adam was saying, I am wary of getting compost from the company that collects the leaves here due to grass clippings that are added with it because of herbicides.
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah, it is something
That
to be
is the
concerned.
one thing that understanding the source of the material you get, and you can ask, and rarely do they know the source, especially if it's one of those community drop off kind of places.
Yeah, yeah, that is the kind of the thing that comes along with all of that as well too, because it does happen. Let's see here. Oh, Serena was asking again too earlier. Do you do a bioassay before planting?
Yes and no. And so, depending on how extensive you want to get into a bioassay,
Yeah,
I do it when I'm building the garden and
yeah,
doing an initial soil test to find out what the nutrients are. You know, digging holes to see if I got earthworms. I don't go as far as like to get a microscope and see, you
yeah,
know, what the microbes are in my soil. It's more of just a general, is my soil good or is my soil bad? And I've just known from gardening so long here in Colorado that the
yeah.
soil is always bad. And so it needs to be amended.
You got it. Yeah,
And I just let the plants speak to me. So once I've had a few years of amending the soil and I can see the earthworms and I can see the arthropods, I can also see that the plants are growing better. And so for me, that's the best bioassay, is that if the plants are green and healthy and you don't have any pests, that's telling you that your environment is good in the garden, that your soil is good, that your water levels are good, that the nutrient levels and the organic matter levels are good, and that your plant selection is good. So it's
yeah,
kind of a big picture assay that you know, I'm able to do because I've just been doing it for so long. But you can get down to the microscopic level if you want to do that. And
yeah.
I've really not gone to that extreme.
Yeah. And then right on, right on. So again, too, if you got any more questions here, we're getting down to the last little bit of our show here today. Definitely jump in with any of those questions that you might have here. We'll drop them in here real quick. And I was seeing here too, again, too, I also want to mention to everybody else as well, too, that Gardner Scott does his live stream. I believe it's, what is it? Like 8 a.m. Is it 8 a.m.
It's
your time?
8 a.m. Pacific time. Yeah.
Pacific time. So
Yeah.
then that would
On
be
Mondays.
what, 11 a.m. Eastern time.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
So I do
Okay.
it. It's 9 o'clock for me, 9 o'clock Mountain time. And
Yeah.
so 8 Pacific, 11 Eastern. And, you know, for those in Australia and Europe, it, you know, is a little bit different. But
Yeah.
generally, I know that like for Tony and everyone in Wales and Scotland and England, it ends up being 4 o'clock in the afternoon for
Oh, okay.
that region. And then it's a little bit later for those in Norway and Sweden. And then, of course, it's much later for
Yeah.
Australia. But
Yeah, yeah.
Happens every Monday or Tuesday morning if you're in Australia, like Rick.
That's right. It's Tuesday. They come from the future, those guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, too, I just mentioned if you don't get any of your questions answered or something you come up with or think of after the show or something like that, you can definitely go and join Gardner Scott on his live stream tomorrow morning. Link down below for Gardner Scott's channel there. If you haven't gone over there, check that out yet. You definitely got to do that. A little while back ago, you did and I kind of touched on this a little bit a couple weeks back as and I was going to want to kind of get into this with you here real quick. You did a live stream and it was titled "Which Garden Advice is Good?" And again, coming down to this idea that and my recommendation anymore to folks, and I've spent years online on social media, part of lots of different gardening groups, and there are great gardening groups out there. If you've got a great community group that is involved or led by someone that you really trust, that sort of stuff is great. But there are a ton of just really large gardening groups that aren't really monitored, aren't really done, and you get a lot of really terrible advice.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the terrible advice from people who are pushing it as though it's the only thing you can do, or this is the way to go, and I've been doing this and all that sort of stuff. And when you get down to it, a lot of it is just really kind of not good advice, misinformation, that sort of thing. And you touched on a lot of those different things. Like one of the things was, you started out with was talking about eggshells. A lot of people believe in eggshells and things. So again, too, let's get into that a little bit. What is good garden advice?
So it starts by recognizing that your garden is different than everybody else's garden.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to start identifying what it is that makes your garden different from people you might be getting advice from. So, I try to keep most of my recommendations general because I don't think anyone else that's in the chat today lives at 7,000 feet elevation in Colorado.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so there are just some plants I can't grow at different times of year. And just today, I saw a video pop up in my feed. I think it was 3 days old. And it was what you can still plant in December. Well,
Yeah.
I can't plant anything in December. And, it's one of those channels from like Southern California.
Right.
Nothing wrong with the information. It's just
Yeah.
recognizing that if I were a new gardener and that was a YouTube channel that I really liked, and they're telling me that I can plant something in December, and I
Mhm.
attempt to plant that, it's going to be a total failure. And so knowing the source
Yeah.
and what they're telling you with not necessarily a grain of salt, but take the information, but then take it a step further and see if you can get collaboration with somebody in your area that will either say yes or no, it works or it doesn't.
Mhm.
Corroboration from somebody else, a channel or a garden expert that you prefer. And it's just not blindly following advice. I joined a local gardening group on Facebook that I saw pop up. It's like, oh, I'll join this. And in the beginning, someone would ask a question or say something, and then I would, put in my 2 cents or try to help out. And what I began to recognize was the large majority of people in this group were helpful, trying to sincerely be helpful with wrong information. And it was
Yeah.
just, it was overwhelming. I could
Yep.
not correct or help the people because there were so many that were corroborating each other with bad information.
Mhm.
And so a new gardener tries something and someone else says, yeah, that's great, and they're not having success with it, they don't necessarily stop to question what that information was in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's really the whole idea, is find a good source for your information, trust it, but then take it that next step further and continue to do research on your own to see if that information will work in your individual garden.
Yeah, definitely. And again, too, then it comes down to, and it's tough. It's difficult for new gardeners who are just getting into it to figure out who and what and that
Mhm.
sort of thing. So, I mean, if you are really ultra new to gardening, this is your first garden, this is, you're just getting started, you don't have much of a, concept of a lot of things and all that. The best advice I think that's out there is to find one of your local gardening extensions.
Oh, absolutely.
Local, because and through that extension you'll find local groups, and
Yeah.
then and not only that, they might have meetups, sort of like you were mentioning. You've got a garden club meetup thing that you've got. Find those sort of things that are local to you. Find some people you can work with personally and that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
then, again too, that doesn't mean that there aren't great advice and things that you could get, like you're saying with that one from Southern California, right? Well, they need to introduce their video saying, hey, mind you, I would grow in Southern California. This is what this advice is for, that sort of
Right.
thing, and that sort of stuff, and lead people along that way and that sort of thing, so it doesn't make them think certain things. But there are great people who are putting out there. I like to think of us as garden inspiration,
Yep.
sharing knowledge, doing that sort of stuff, taking people through what our experience is through our garden and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But
And it's a
also,
guideline.
yeah, but also one of the reasons why I like having you here for this Q&A, and I asked you to do this throughout this year and stuff, is you are a master gardener. You've gone through these programs. You've done this sort of stuff and gotten some of this great knowledge and that sort of stuff about
But
gardening.
even that, and that's why I made a video a few years ago, and that's why I did the live stream, because master gardeners don't know it all either.
Right, absolutely.
When I was running the school garden as a Colorado master gardener, I relied on volunteers a lot. It was a huge garden. We had a lot to grow. And two of my volunteers were also master gardeners. One
Right.
had gone through the Master Gardener program in California, and one had gone through the Master Gardener program in Kansas. And
Oh,
they were lost
mm,
trying to grow a garden in Colorado.
right.
So they had the foundation. The Master Gardener program is outstanding in teaching you how to do research, teaching you how to learn to garden, but it
Yeah.
doesn't teach you everything outside your local area. So all of the stuff I learned in my Master Gardener program was very specific to Colorado. And these
Mhm.
volunteers came to me as master gardeners to
Yeah.
learn how to garden in Colorado because it's so different
Yeah.
than California and
And that gets
Kansas.
back to that idea of, finding that locally, making sure that you're learning things
Absolutely.
locally, something that's more specific to whatever region and climate that you live in and all of that. And yeah. And again, too, it's just one of those things. I've found myself, is as much as I tried, as you mentioned, you were in some of these groups and things and trying to help people out and all of that. And I thought, for the most part, my advice is just mostly, hey, here's some university research on this. Here's what they've done to check in on that sort of stuff, and trying to lead people in the right direction. But even if I'm leading someone in the right direction, I found myself just being a part of the problem ultimately. Is that, who's to tell who's saying what and what's correct at what point, when you're in
Yeah.
such a large thing with different information coming from different directions and different people talking about different stuff. So when it comes down to it, and I said, it's just one of my best pieces of advice for anybody who's just getting started in gardening. Start there. Start at a local extension.
Yeah.
Start with a local gardening group or club or something like that, where you can meet some people who actually grow in
And
your
a
region.
local nursery. Often the growers at the nursery
Yeah.
have lived in the neighborhoods and understand, and they can also set you up. The garden club,
Yeah.
I highly recommend finding a garden club in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
It's not a guarantee. My garden club is made up of a lot of new gardeners, and they join the garden club to learn. But that's great
Mhm.
because I'm in the garden club and there's a lot of other experienced gardeners in the garden club. So finding that place, you're exactly right. Somebody who has, you know, bled and sweated and
Mhm.
suffered trying to grow in your region, those are the ones that usually are good to listen to. But even some of those
Right.
still put eggshells in the ground, thinking that they're going to do well. I've got a local garden friend. He and I have taught classes together for extension.
Yeah.
He's great, and he will tell you in his top 3 things to get better tomatoes is to sprinkle a bag of sugar around your
Wow.
tomatoes, which is a total waste of time. But he believes in it. He thinks it works. He teaches to do that. It doesn't harm anything. Technically, it might cause some
depends on
bloom
how
of,
much you're putting in there, right?
Some of the bacteria that really aren't helpful are going to bloom because they're eating all the sugar in your soil. So even the best master gardeners who are trusted sources don't always have the best information. But on the whole, you're going to get good information if you can find those sources.
Yeah. It comes down to a lot of that stuff is it again becomes a part of the process of learning. I mean, most of us gardeners, whether we even before social media, all this sort of stuff is, we've got to take the advice we get and that sort of stuff, put it into practice, see how it works for us. And again, becomes again part of the fun of gardening, experimenting, trying things, doing different things and stuff like that. But when it comes down to it, there are just certain things like that, like with eggshells, they're not an immediate source of calcium for your garden. Many people might believe that they are, but they're not. And
just like banana peels are not a good source of potassium for your garden. But I put banana peels in my compost, but I'm not going to bury a banana peel thinking that it's going to be some magic factor for good growth.
Yeah. Like Serena asked real quick here too. Does adding baking soda to the planting hole really yield sweeter tomatoes?
No. What yields sweeter tomatoes is the variety of tomatoes that you're growing. Now, there's minimal effect of the soil pH in how well the plant grows, and a healthier plant is going to produce better fruit, and that fruit may be sweeter if it's the right kind of variety from a plant that is suffering. So if you've got a sick plant and a healthy plant, the fruit's going to taste better on the healthy plant. So where that baking soda idea comes from, it's from the same people that tell you to add wood ashes to your soil.
Right.
If you live usually in the eastern United States, where the soil pH tends to be quite acidic, then you want to add something to your soil to raise the pH, and baking soda is one of those things that theoretically would raise the soil pH. But it is such a short-term influence that it really doesn't do anything. And that's the idea behind the wood ashes too, is that it's going to add an alkaline source to your soil. So it's going to neutralize an acidic soil, which when plants are growing closer to neutral pH, they're going to be stronger, they're going to be healthier, the fruit's going to taste better. And that's kind of where it gets back to. And so, you probably as a kid, most of us, had that volcano where you put the baking soda in it and then you pour vinegar and it bubbles up. Well, you're just adding an acid to an alkaline. And so if you've got an acidic soil, yeah, sure, it makes sense to put baking soda in your soil to neutralize the pH, but it really doesn't work that way. There's so many other better options. If that's the reason that your tomatoes aren't sweet because your soil is bad, don't just sprinkle baking soda. Look at the bigger issue and add organic matter to help buffer the soil pH and lots of other things.
Because that's, really the case though, too, in the long run, is that people are looking for some sort of like external fix, some sort of thing, that we can, if I just do this, that'll do this for this and all that. But really in the long run, and again, there are some complicating factors to some parts of gardening, but for the most part, we got Tony in the chat right now too. We can simplify things really easy in organic gardening by just really thinking about some really basic stuff that in how nature works and how we can apply that into our garden to build really ultimately. And as we talked about next week, we've got on our show Grow Your Soil. We're going to be talking a lot about soil and all of that. Is just really putting some effort into all of into the right strategies to make sure that you've got
Exactly.
really great soil. And then in the most part, like you were talking about too, with the peppers, everything's great, soil's great and all that. All you got to really do is pop those things in and give them some water and let them go, right?
Exactly.
We can
And
really
and
simplify
in
things.
my live stream tomorrow, I'll be talking about genetics, and Mark actually touched a little bit on it when he was talking about Tony's book.
Yeah.
It starts with the genetics. If you want a sweet tomato, then grow a sweet tomato. It's that simple. If you've done all the other steps, if you've got good soil, if you know how to water, if you've got enough sun, then the tomato plant's going to grow and you're going to have a sweet tomato. If like Mark's analogy was perfect. I was actually planning to use it tomorrow when I was talking about
You'll
genetics,
love it.
About the pumpkins.
Yeah.
I grew giant pumpkins at the school garden, and we were able to grow pumpkins that weighed more than 100 pounds.
Oh, wow.
But they had to be the kind of tomato or pumpkins that would grow to be 100 pounds. And it didn't matter how much we watered, didn't matter how many nutrients we would give them, they would never grow to 500 pounds. You have to get special seed to have a 500-pound tomato or pumpkin, because I'm coming back to tomatoes. It's the same with tomatoes. If you want a super sweet tomato, you have to have a variety that is super sweet. If you like a different flavor, if you like a tart tomato, then you grow a tomato that gives you the tartness. And the tart tomato is never going to be sweet because of the genetics. And it is that simple. Tony talked about it in his book, and Mark talked about it before I came on.
Yeah.
If you understand the simplicity of gardening, there's a lot of steps, but each of those steps are really simple.
Yeah,
Then
it's
you'll have
understandable.
whatever you want.
Yeah, it's understandable. You look at gardening, you look at plants and growing things and all that sort of stuff, and it really, right on its face, looks and seems complicated. But when you really break it down, it actually is a lot more simpler than I think a lot of us make it out to be and everything too. So really good, simple strategies and everything like that. But right on, man. It's the time has flown right by today.
It
Telling
does.
you what, again, it's been so great again too to have you here on the show throughout the year. Unfortunately, we missed the last couple of months, but it's been great to have you back here again to finish out the year. And
hopefully we can do more of it next year.
Looking
ahead to 2025.
That's what we're going to do, is we're going to look ahead right to 2025. We'll get more Gardner Scott here on the show with us each and every month here on the Let's Get Growing show. I do want to encourage everybody again too, if you haven't checked out his channel or subscribed or anything like that, I've got a link right down below. Please do that. And if you can, go by there, check out one of his videos, live stream tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Go catch up with him if you didn't get any of your garden questions answered today. Or again, like I said, if you think of something after the show or something like that, write it down. Go join him on his show tomorrow, and you can find a link for all of that down there on his channel link in the description as well too. And then drop by, go say hi, tell him you saw him here on the Let's Get Growing show for sure.
Yeah, I recognize a lot of familiar names in the chat, but there's a few on there that I don't recognize. So hope to see you tomorrow morning.
Yeah, exactly. And again, too, that's one of the great fun things that we get to do here with these sort of shows and things and live streams and everything. It's like we got, again, I love to point to the top of the screen right there. That's what we're here doing, is we're, growing community through gardening. Yes, we can give some advice and doing all of that, but I think really the ultimate benefit we get, from a lot of this is just to get to hear from each other, get to learn a little bit more from these conversations and all of that, which is a great part of community. And I think another important part of gardening as well too, is it's a good way for us to help build community, whether it's online or again coming back to the idea of finding local garden groups, go to your garden extension and that sort of stuff, and build some community around you in your own garden space as well.
Yeah, very well said. That's actually what my first live stream of 2025 is going to be about.
Oh, perfect.
Is the community of gardening, developing that community. So I completely agree with you. And this community that you have, the community that I have, a lot of joint participation between the two of us.
That's when you know it's really working too. You
Yeah,
know, we're seeing
exactly.
everybody participating all over the place, you know, seeing all of
And
your
it's
familiar
so
names
good.
out there is just really awesome for all of us doing this.
It's so good.
Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent,
Always
Scott.
good to be here, Enoch.
Yeah. Again, too, I look forward to 2025 and all of the great conversations that we'll get to have there too, here on the Urban Gardener channel, and also over there on the Gardener Scott channel as well too. Again, one more time, link down below in the description. And
Thanks.
again, we'll look forward to seeing Gardener Scott next month, second Sunday of the month, and we'll really kick in and dig into what we got growing on for 2025, because we'll be right in it at that time, won't we?
That's right. We have a month of planning that we can do between now and then.
All right, well, let's see what we plan. And thanks again, Gardener Scott, for being here with us today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good to be here. Have a great end of your year.
All right. We look forward to seeing you soon.
Bye-bye.
Let's Get Growing is sponsored by IV Organic.
Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with Ivory Organics, where we grow cool plants, and author, Saving the World with the Home Garden. Ivory Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard has 7 natural oils that protect your plants, not just from the summer heat as well as winter cold, but also protects your plants from damaging insects and rodents. The oils in the product include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. These oils are natural insect and rodent repellent oils, which are encapsulated by the base powder, offering your plants months of protection at a time. 1 application per year will suffice for protection against damaging summer sunburn and winter sun scald, but if the target is pests, application as much as 2 to 3 times a year may be necessary.
All right, everybody. How about that? Again, too, what an awesome weekend this weekend of Let's Get Growing shows here. Thank you all so much for being here today and being a part of this conversation. And again, like I said, too, is if you didn't get any of your questions answered, I know there were probably a couple there that were popping in at the end there. Again, definitely go and check out Gardener Scott's channel or his live stream tomorrow, and he'll definitely take care of those questions for you there as well too. And again, yeah, thank you all so much too. Again, I just want to say, you know, that it's really great to have all of you here too, kind of continuing on there what we were talking about at the end there about having such a great, wonderful gardening community. And it's just, you know, it's just, this year, I think, has been one of those biggest parts of this experience for me, especially in having a newer show and that sort of thing in the gardening community, is to see how well all of you guys have come together and come around in what we have in our small part of this little side part of the whole overall gardening community. Has just been really wonderful, and all of your support is just so awesome. And I just really appreciate it too. Like Em says here, this is a nice community. Yes, it is. The overall gardening community and the little one that we're building up right here too. And let's see. Tony also says, I love the online community. Shame they aren't all like it. That's right. I love the Arlong. Love it. It's just really great. And so again, thank you all so much for being here today. John, thank you. Christopher, just so really great to see you. I see that what we got? What was it? Connie was joining in with us here, and it says, everybody have a great week. I've missed most of it. Yeah, awesome. Yeah, go back, check it out. Leave us a comment in the comment section too as well. And just really great to see all of you and have all of you here with us here for this show. And again, we really can't do all of this stuff without you. You know, this show requires viewers and great people to come and be a part of it. And you guys have really just shown up week after week, and I appreciate it so much, so definitely, continue to show up, continue to come by and check out what we've got growing on. So again, I want to mention next Saturday on our show, next Saturday, what we're going to be doing is a special year in review, an end of the 2024 growing season special, where we're going to talk all about this last year. And again, kind of continue on what I was just talking about there, about just how wonderful this year has been for our show and all of that too. So we'll talk about a lot of the different guests we've had, a lot of that sort of stuff. We'll look back on 2024. And then again, similar to what we were talking about today with Gardner Scott, we'll also kind of take a little bit of a look towards 2025 as well too. It'll be a fun hangout. We're going to have Charles Malky from Ivy Organics joining with us live. We'll catch up and talk with Charles there too, and have him on the show. When we'll also have Sarah will come join us for maybe a live trivia as well too. We'll get Sarah from sarahseedshop.com joining with us, maybe a couple of others as well too. And again too, we'll just have a really fun hangout. We'll talk all about the show and what we're looking forward to for next year. So again too, next weekend will be basically our final weekend of 2024, and we're going to take a couple of weeks off, and then we'll be right back at it again right after the new year. I've got some great guests lining up for January, and some great conversations. We already mentioned too, to be second Sunday of the month, we can look forward to having Gardner Scott back on the channel. Third Sunday, we'll have another book club, which we got to mention too, is that for our Sunday edition next week again too, which will be the final show of 2024. We'll get together for our book club with our good friend Mark Boucher Colbert, who does our In the Garden segment for our Sunday show. Join with us to be our live co-host for the Garden Book Club, and we'll have Diane Meisler joining with us with her book Grow Your Soil. And again, too, just a great book. Been loving this book. I can't wait to talk to Mark and Diane about this book next weekend on the show. This can be a real great time. And again, too, a great opportunity to learn a little bit more about growing and our gardening soil and soil care and condition and all that sort of stuff that we need to be thinking about right there in that really great book that Diane wrote. And then we'll learn all about Diane and how she came to author, all that sort of stuff. That's what's great about the book club, and our book club especially, is that we get to have the author with us there to talk all about it. So definitely join with us next Sunday for, again, what will be our final show of 2024. And also to go back and check out yesterday's show too. Tony's been in the chat with us today. It's been great to see him, but he was here for a wonderful, awesome conversation yesterday on the show. So again, go check out our show yesterday with Tony O'Neill, and also get to meet in our Are You Following Me segment, Michael Overstreet from the Garden Nerd. Yeah, really great conversation with Michael. It was great to meet him. Another fun part of what we get to do with our show is get to meet up with smaller channels and other people who are doing things in the gardening community and all of that as well too. So again, really fun show yesterday. You won't want to miss it. So go back and definitely check that out. And also to real quick here, just make sure that we're getting that in. Oh yeah, and I see that Serena was asking the same question what we were just covering right there. What are our holiday plans for this channel? So yeah, different than last year. We took a couple of months off last year, so this year we're only going to take a couple of weeks. That's it. Just just the holiday weekends leading us up into New Year's. The first weekend of January, right after New Year's, we'll be right back at it here on the Let's Get Growing show. And again, I just really look forward to it. It's been such an awesome year this year. I just can't wait to see what it's going to be like for next year. So right on. And again, too, as we're finishing up the show here, again, thank you all for being here. And if you can, before you leave, if you haven't already, be sure to click the like button, hit the thumbs up there, subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. And of course, the bell notification to be notified of all of our upcoming live streams and videos. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the show too, videos. We're going to be working on. That's going to be one of my biggest goals for myself personally in 2025, is to get out more actual videos, garden journals, things like that. So we'll be looking forward to some of those. I've got a few that have been in the can for a little while now, so we're going to start trying to pump those out over the next couple of weeks. So that's a good reason why you want to make sure you hit that bell notification so you be notified when all of those new videos videos start to pop up here on the channel. And then definitely share with all of your garden friends. This is one of the biggest things I really appreciate the most about what you guys do as a community for us here on our channel and other channels, and our guests that show up here and all of that, is sharing and participating in that sort of way. So all the sharing you can do to help others know about and learn about our Let's Get Growing show and all these wonderful gardening conversations that we're having here every Saturday and Sunday, again at 11 a.m. Pacific time, 2 p.m. Eastern, is greatly appreciated. So I really love it when you guys share our show out, share out the channel, and help bring us some more viewers. That's when we can't wait to see what we end up with here. We had such great growth in viewership this year. Can't wait to see what we do this next year for sure. So again, to follow all of our links down below to our guest Gardener Scott for sure, and some of our other links that we have for the channel, as well as I do have a link down below for our gardening group. Come join the Urban Gardener community and continue the conversation after the show on our Facebook group, the appropriately named Let's Get Growing Gardening Group. And it's a great place for you to go and share all of your pictures, some video if you want, just ask some questions, give some advice, all that sort of stuff, continue the conversation, like I said, right there on our gardening group. Link down below in the description for that. And also, one of the things too, I still have some left over, so I wanted to mention this all to you guys as well too. I kind of touched on and mentioned it as one of my favorite tomatoes I have growing in my garden that I've got from many years ago from one of my favorite gardeners on YouTube. One of the first gardeners I got to know on YouTube was Ray Browning over at the Praxis 55719 channel, and he has a cherry tomato that he named Prax cherry tomato that he developed himself there, and it's a great tomato, really wonderful open pollinated seed. I literally actually like to call it an heirloom anymore, more so because it's got a really great story and it's got lots and lots and lots of generations and everything. So you're definitely guaranteed to get some of these just amazing, delicious tomatoes. And I've got some seed for you all. I grow a lot of them, so I've got a lot of seed. And if you want to get some of these Prax cherry tomato seeds to grow in your garden for your 2025 season, send me an email over at letsgetgrowing@mail.com. That's mail.com, not gmail.com. I know I might have to figure out and do a Gmail for that sort of thing for all of you as well too, because I get asked that quite a bit. But it's letsgetgrowing@mail.com. And if you send me an email there and just let me know that you're interested in the Prax cherry tomato seeds, and I'll send you some instructions on how to get some of those seeds for yourself as well too. And again, too, our sponsor is Ivy Organics. We'll see Charles next week on the show. Go check out Ivy Organic at ivyorganic.com and go get yourself some of that 3-in-1 plant guard that they have there at Ivy Organic. It's really a great product. One of the few products I like to endorse. So definitely go and get some of that for your own garden, and use our promo code GROW10, GROW10, to get 10% off of that there as well too. So again, yeah, lots and lots going on. I love it. Such a great show, such a great weekend. We had great guests, great viewers like yourself. Just really awesome to have you all here. So again, thank you all so much for what you're for all that you contribute to making this show as special as it is. And I look forward to seeing you all for a year in review this next Saturday. So I'll see you there.